What's happening, everybody? Hope you're doing well today. And I tell you, I didn't realize the firestorm that some of these videos and commentaries that I've offered in reference to just real history would cause. But it's a beautiful thing because now people are talking about it. And what I want you to do is make sure you click that like button, share button, and comment and all of the above, because it's great to have a conversation that many people were not even aware needed to be had. Until the death of Elizabeth, and when that happened, it caused people to start thinking. And what it did was when people who understood the real history of the British monarchy and also of that of the Elizabeth, their queen, they started talking about it. It's kind of interesting though, because somebody commented on the page. He was like, "Well, all of this talk about it is hate and divisive." And typically, when you start telling the truth about something, that's when people want to come with that to try to muzzle you. But guess what? You ain't muzzling nobody, because people are still talking. Even now, it's seeping into the news media where they're having to address it, because people are like, oh, heck no. We're not celebrating this. We're not, we recognize the human side of it. Sorry that a human being has passed away, but that human being's legacy needs to be addressed, because what you're doing is peddling some hot BS to us about this legacy. And so people who understand it, they're like, you can't fool me with this. People who don't know are the ones who are the most vehemently opposed to anybody having anything to say about this lady and her legacy. And they make all kinds of excuses. And again, as in previous commentaries I shared, one of the saddest things is seeing Africans and Black Americans and Black anybody who's been oppressed by the British imperial system historically, now celebrating this. And it's only because people don't know. It's only because they've been either educated under those systems, they've been educated in those cultures, they've been indoctrinated with the propaganda that's come by way of that particular system. And so that's all they know. They don't know anything else. Or I'll hear people be rather flippant. It's like, well, every country, every establishment has gone through that. Everything. See, those are people who have not been directly affected by it to their knowledge. To be that flippant about concentration camps in Kenya that were overseen by Elizabeth II. And so it's easy for them to kind of say that, because it didn't directly affect their families. They didn't lose land. They didn't lose loved ones. They don't have that in their immediate history to address. And so for me, in traveling through 17 different African countries, and I've been to Francophone countries, I've been to Anglophone countries. So Francophone countries are countries that were colonized by the French. Anglophone countries are countries colonized by the British. You begin to see something. And so the theme that we're talking about today is this whole British Commonwealth. And it's like, because notice they put the British Empire and the Commonwealth, the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth together in this narrative. And of course, all the little African presidents sitting up there, we're proud members of the Commonwealth, where wealth is not common, except for one player. And when I say that, meaning, yes, you do have some African countries that have larger gross domestic product. They have a larger GDP, annual GDP, than others. But when you get down to the nuts and bolts of it, and you begin to look at the global economic power of the British Commonwealth, you begin to realize that, one, independence never occurred. It only occurred on paper. It was a brokered deal because things were getting so out of control in some of these countries. They said, so we got to do something. It's kind of like negotiating management. Okay, how do we do this? Well, let's put managers in place that look like these people, because let's just look at it as a corporation. Let's put managers, government structures in place to manage these people. And let's put the ones in place that look like them, so we don't necessarily look like the bad guys as much. As a matter of fact, we can play good cop, bad cop. With these systems that we put in place, we'll compensate, say, the presidents halfway decent, and there's, the people that we want to compensate along the way. But we still kind of hold ourselves in high regard. We still, we still get into the people's mind. We still control their education. We still control their broader, larger religion. We still control the national language. We still do this while giving them the illusion of being independent. Now, again, there have been some people who, from some of the different countries, that don't like this being brought about. Say, well, y'all think y'all African from African Americans, y'all in the diaspora think y'all know everything. You don't think we know our history and all this, that, and the other. It has nothing to do with that. This is a global problem. This is not about your one little country. This is about a global problem that we're all dealing with. And so when people stop long enough to stop, because I would get into these discussions with people and they would want to tell me about their country, and I'm saying your country was formed by them too. Your government system was formed by them. Just like the stuff that we deal with in America, just the stuff that we deal with Black Americans and everything, it's the same. It's the same thing. So when we try to do it, we're not coming down on anybody. We're just saying, listen, y'all, we've been dealing with these jokers a long time, and meaning if you take 1865 and you put that to 1957, so you're dealing with almost 100-year difference. And so when you talk about that, it's like one thing I appreciate anytime I go to South Africa and I see how they resisted and I see what they were dealing with when I go down to Durban and I'm learning about the people who had to sit outside naked in order to get like a pass to be able to work and stuff like that in some of the most humiliating conditions. So then when I hear people say, oh, just get over it, forget, I said, well, guess what? Yo, behind wasn't sitting out there naked and having to deal with it. And then I interviewed the brother and he showed me the scars on his face of what he had to dealing with the whole apartheid time. It's like, oh, just get over it. Just get over it. And anytime I hear somebody say, just get over it, I guarantee you that Negro or Negretta or whatever that person is has not been through it. So that person, you just dismiss them because it's insane to tell someone who either dealt with or directly dealing with the effects of this stuff to simply get over it, and we just move forward by not talking about it. And I said another talk, I said, you don't hear the Jews talking about, let's not talk about Hitler and let's forget Auschwitz and let's forget what happened during that time. You don't hear the Jews saying that, but what you will hear is you will hear weak-minded people who it's a, you know what it's a response to trauma, a dysfunction, to say let's just get over it. How you move forward is you tell the truth, you address what happened, and now you find a solution. And in the meantime, you continue to say, this is the history, just like they pushed down our throat all that garbage about Christopher Columbus and George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and all of these other so-called founding fathers and all this other nonsense that they peddle our way, just like they remind us of that in our curriculums. Then it's just perfectly all right to be reminded of the dirty draws that they have left behind, through historically dirty draws that have been left behind that nobody seems to want to wash and think that they don't stink no more. I mean, these are the things that when you start getting into the nuts and the bolts of what has happened and what is still occurring, and that's the other part. When people say, oh, that's old news, that happened 70 years ago. That happened 400 years ago. Well, if you get your behind on a plane and you go fly around to some of these so-called colonies, you go to some of these francophone countries and see how the French trashed these countries. You understand the history of how the French trashed Haiti and why the reason why Haiti struggles financially is because of paying reparations to the French. But somehow these same people have a problem with the people who have been stolen from being paid reparations. I don't understand why we got to pay reparations for what other people did. Then why are the Haitians paying the French? Or why did the Haitians have to pay the French reparations for their own freedom? And see, when you understand the gangster nature of how these colonial imperial entities work, and you see the effects of it today, there's no way with a common brain and common sense that somebody can walk away talking about this stuff is old news. These systems are still in place. If you even watch how some of these African presidents got right on code with their colonial master and said exactly what they were supposed to say when Elizabeth died, then you knew which rod was up there behind, and you knew it, and you said, wow, this is very interesting. They talk trash, but when it comes down to it, they have no military to fight with because they require their arms to come from their colonial masters, whichever one it might be. So if you don't have a military to fight, there's nothing you can do. You don't have a currency to be able to stand on your own because you rely on the World Bank and IMF to give you your funding. That's everybody in the world. That's the whole world. That's the way the world works. But until we acknowledge that and say, okay, really, nobody's independent. So let's not delude ourselves into thinking it. Now, how do we play the game? You educate yourself. This is how people make millions and billions of dollars because they understand the system. The reason why a lot of people stay poor, broke, busted, and disgusted, complaining about corrupt leaders in their countries and in their city governments and all of that, the same stuff happens in America, the same stuff happens in Africa. The reason why that happens is because people are not willing to understand the systems that they're in. And when you don't understand the system that you're in, you believe what they tell you. You believe that if you go out and and vote for this particular person or that particular person, well, then that person's going to fight for your interest. But cycle after cycle, I hear the same complaints. The government ain't doing what it's supposed to know, and the people in the government is corrupt, and this, that, and the other. And I hear that on both sides of the Atlantic. And I'm saying, y'all looking at the governments, but you're not even looking at the head. You're chopping off the arms and the feet, and you're not even looking at the head. And so one key element of the head died. Now, another element of the head is still, the head is the system. So Elizabeth is gone. Now Charles is in there, and then William is going to, they all have understood that we are here to preserve the system. And they'll morph it and they'll say, well, she didn't have control and they are really a non-entity and all of that. That's all propaganda. That's all designed to get smoke and mirrors, to get people to go look and believe something a particular way. But I'm going to show you some clips and I'm going to show you some interesting things today. And I hope that as you walk away with it, I mean, again, fact check everything I'm saying. No, hey, fact check it or whatever. You know, if you don't like it, cool. It's not a matter of liking it. I mean, one thing I realize is when people are triggered by truth, it reveals a deeper dysfunction within them. And I've had people send some hardcore nasty messages and all of that. Stop talking about it. I ain't gonna stop talking about it. How about that? And a whole lot of other people ain't gonna stop talking about it. Why don't you go get a channel and you talk about it, see what you got to say. Now, that's what I'm saying. So anyway, let's get here and learn about this British Commonwealth. We're going to dissect it a little bit. This is going to be real good, y'all. I'm telling you, don't turn away. I got some good stuff coming. If you want to talk about how you navigate these systems and really find success, you don't want to tune out. I promise you that, because we got a few gold nuggets for you along the way. All right, check this out. Here's the British Commonwealth.
The British Empire hasn't really existed since the late 60s. However, the empire didn't disappear without leaving a long-lasting legacy on the geopolitical landscape of today. A legacy that led to the creation of the Commonwealth of Nations. The Commonwealth of Nations is an association of 54 independent and sovereign states, most of which are former territories of the British Empire. With a conjoined land area of 11.5 million square miles and 2.4 billion people, the Commonwealth contains approximately 20% of the world's land and 32% of the world's inhabitants. This massive association is unique on the world stage, with its roots in British imperialism. At its height, the largest empire the world had ever seen, the decline of the British Empire led to political turmoil and unrest throughout its formerly colonized regions, particularly outside of its mostly white colonies like Canada and Australia. These colonies would be the first to see change, being promoted to dominion status throughout the late 19th century and early 20th century. This meant they had more independence over their own affairs, while still ultimately being under the authority of the Crown. Canada would be the first to become a dominion in 1867, followed by Australia in 1901, New Zealand and Newfoundland in 1907, South Africa in 1910, and Ireland in 1922, the leaders of which would attend the 1926 Imperial Conference. At this conference, Britain and its dominions agreed that they would all be equal members of the British Empire, meaning, despite all owing allegiance to the Crown, they would not be ruled by the United Kingdom. The powers at this conference decided on the name British Commonwealth of Nations to describe their newly formed organization, the first form of what we now know as the Commonwealth of Nations today. This agreement would be formalized in the Statute of Westminster in 1931, allowing the Commonwealth to take shape. It is notable to point out that, at the time of the Imperial Conference, the British Empire included vast areas of land in Africa, much of the Middle East, the entirety of Pakistan and India, as well as several other regions across the world, while the only territories represented at the Imperial Conference were the predominantly white members of the British Empire, leading many to refer to this early form of the Commonwealth as the White Commonwealth. The newly formed British Commonwealth of Nations would only exist in this form for a relatively brief period. Britain's colonies not included in the early Commonwealth began to seek further separation and even independence from the British, beginning with India in 1947. India would become a part of the Commonwealth initially. However, upon announcing intentions to sever ties with the Crown and become a republic in 1949, it would no longer meet the requirements for Commonwealth membership. It was because of India's switch to a republican form of government that, at a meeting of Commonwealth leaders in 1949, It was decided that member states may be in the Commonwealth if they accepted the British Crown as a symbol of free association between member states, meaning India could remain in the Commonwealth. Along with this change, it was decided that the British Commonwealth of Nations would drop the British in its title, becoming the Commonwealth of Nations we know today. Pakistan and Sri Lanka would also be Commonwealth members by 1949. The Irish Free State, one of the founding members of the original British Commonwealth, would withdraw from the Commonwealth at this time as well, meaning this is what the new Commonwealth of Nations looked like as of 1949. The number of Commonwealth nations would increase greatly throughout the next several decades. However, it did not come without its issues. 2 other member states, on top of Ireland, would leave the Commonwealth. Firstly, the founding member South Africa in 1961, and later Pakistan in 1972. Both of these, however, would rejoin, the first being Pakistan, rejoining after 17 years in 1989, and the second, South Africa, rejoining after 33 years in 1994. Mozambique, joining in 1995, was the first nation to join the Commonwealth of Nations that was not at some point under British control, but rather Portuguese control as a colony. Today, the Commonwealth of Nations has 54 member states across the world, with the most recent addition being Rwanda in November of 2009. While, since 1949, Commonwealth members have been allowed to choose their head of state freely, many Commonwealth nations continue to observe the Queen as a reigning constitutional monarch. These 16 nations are all members of the Commonwealth of Nations, and are collectively known as the Commonwealth Realm. These nations include, among others, Canada, Jamaica, the UK, Australia, Papua New Guinea, and New Zealand. The Commonwealth of Nations is one of the largest associations of countries in the world today, and exists to serve the economic, social, and political needs of its member states, from some of the world's largest economies to countless developing nations, and is an interesting result of British imperialism. This is 435 American. Thanks for watching.
Very interesting, and I like to be able to show these types of video clips. Go check more, go search the British Commonwealth. Again, a part of your own personal due diligence. We're not about waiting for somebody to come and educate us. We're going to educate ourselves. And this is just a small piece to be able to do it. It's a great time to do it. Most people never heard of the British Commonwealth and understood the level of the tentacles that have flow from that particular institution. Now, what I want to do is show you another clip that I pre-recorded because I was able to do it. It's kind of funny because you see we kind of just raw with it. But let's take a look at let's take a look at this here, the video talking about the gross domestic product and how much countries earn annually. And then we'll talk a little bit about Black America and the real power of Black America. And we're going to tie that in to the real power of Africa. We're going to offer you some real solutions, something tangible you can walk away with so you know you're not as broke as you think you are. You're not as downtrodden as you think you are. So let's make it happen. Check this out. All right, so as we begin to look at the GDP of the different countries, and we talk about this Commonwealth, and that I believe is important because you look at the United States in billions in 2022, projected to be $25,346.81 billion. That is, and I believe that you take that 25 billion $25 billion. I mean, let's see what the equivalent of it is. Hey Siri, how many trillion dollars is $25,346 billion?
Okay, I found this on the web. For how many trillion dollars is $25,000 $346 billion? Check it out.
All right, so I'm gonna go to a billion. All right, so 25,346, and how that translates into billions. I mean trillions. Sorry. So it's $25.346 trillion. That's what it boils down to. So $25 trillion. I'm gonna go with the trillions here. Then I go back to the billions. So $25 trillion. China right behind with 19 trillion. Japan, coming further back with 4.9 trillion. Germany with 4.2 trillion. UK is at 3.3 trillion. All right. So that's just the UK. That's just the UK by itself. And if you get into, like, you go right here to Australia at $1.7 trillion. If you take Black America, just the GDP of Black America is estimated to be right around 1.6, $1.7 trillion annually. And if you put Black America as a country, it's going to be right here, number 14, 15, somewhere in that range in the world. So everybody talking about we broke and all this other kind of stuff. Yeah, okay. But of course, how many people really sit down and go look through the GDP of everything? Especially we're just using their system. And if you look at the UK and France, both of them, right, not too far from each other. And much of their GDP comes from their earnings, their residual earnings from their colonized interests, which is very interesting. And I mean, now, when you take the UK and you put the Commonwealth along with the UK, I think that's another important note. Putting the Commonwealth along with the UK, you have Canada, Australia. You start adding up all of these Commonwealth countries, now it starts to tell a whole different story. And then you go down further. Okay, so now we see our first African country, number 28, with Nigeria, $510 billion GDP. Then you go down a little bit further, you have South Africa at 426 billion. And then I would imagine further down, you have Egypt coming in at 435 now. That Egypt's is kind of more on its own in that regard. But if you take South Africa and you take Nigeria, you're almost at another $1 trillion that's a part of this British Commonwealth. And then you just add up all of the other countries that are a part of the British Commonwealth. I'm not going to do it at this point in time, but you begin to see something that's very interesting. It's a very interesting dynamic when you start scrolling through. You see Ghana here at $73 billion. You see Kenya at $114 billion. And these are all a part of this British Commonwealth. And you just Tanzania, $77 billion. You can just keep going on and on and on and seeing a lot of these different connections to this British Commonwealth. So you add all of this up, and let's just say you add all of this up and the British Commonwealth gets 10% of all of it. It now adds even more to the overall wealth, which is not common, because the natural resources, here we are with the Gambia, 2 billion. They're part of the British Commonwealth. So you start looking, you start seeing, okay, wait a minute, where it's not common wealth, except for those at the top. And that's real. That's real. You start going, you look, you see Sierra Leone here, 4.2 billion. They're part of the British Commonwealth. And again, you get 10% of that. Let's say this, I'm just saying 10% just to be, kind. There are probably other things that aren't even being reported in here, and those who are part of this British Commonwealth. We won't even talk about the French how the French controls the currency of their colonies. And I hesitate to use the term former. I hesitate to use this term because if you're still controlling the money, if you still have a level of influence while under the illusion of independence, you're still in control. You're still in control. So that is just a breakdown and understanding of, I encourage everybody to kind of study this whole thing even more. Yep, and studying it even more, what it does, it puts you in a position of when people try to tell you that's old news, and you see, the thing is, here's the reason why many people fail to recognize what's going on, because they don't understand economics. They're looking at it from cultural, they're looking at it from emotional, they're looking at it from what they've been taught in schools. And I always ask people, who told you this? When the people were coming to defend Elizabeth, they were like, no, she was great and she didn't have a choice. I said, who told you that? Where'd you get the information from? They hesitate because they've heard something from someone. And it's just like in America, when our education system has been controlled by white supremacy. So even when many of the HBCUs are named after white people, founded by white people, NAACP was co-founded by white Jews, you know? So when you start getting into the history of this, you see the handprint of white supremacy all over the place. So it's not that Black Americans are we're not exclusive, and we're not somebody people who don't deal with this stuff. We still deal with it. We're filtering this stuff. What you see us doing is filtering this garbage out of our minds because we've spent our entire lives being taught and indoctrinated in all kinds of systems, y'all. And so what many people, not I won't say many, I'll say some. I'm gonna say some on this one because you got a lot of people on the continent who are going through the same purging. They're like, look, but one of the things that I've heard a few times is that y'all Black Americans, y'all are angry and y'all upset, y'all just need to move forward. And then you look back, you're like, do you see the condition of what you got going on? And you're telling somebody, you kind of stop and you say to yourself, really, really, really? It's like, do you even understand why many people say the things that they do? And the thing is, and this is the beautiful part about those in South Africa who resisted, those Black Americans who resisted, those in Nigeria who resisted, those in Kenya who resisted, those who resisted just across the board, because what you begin to see is there's a common thread. They understand down in South America who resisted, I forget the gentleman's name, but he fought against the Portuguese and he kicked back against them. Now, you would run into people, I think, like out in Seychelles, where one guy, he was actually resisting, and I guess they brokered a deal with him, and then he went out to catching people and doing, and becoming basically an agent for the colonizer. And that's the same thing that happened with the dude in Nigeria, Abbas, I think that's a Cherokee Williams Abbas or something like that. He was down in Brazil, and he was actually, from what I was told, enslaved. And then his slave master saw that he was good at negotiating or whatever in business, and then he ended up becoming a slave trader. And that happened. That's the reality. Nobody's trying to say that did not happen. Nobody's trying to say that. Not me. I mean, because I recognize from being objective that there's no way that imperial powers could come into a massive continent like Africa and take over, running up in the jungles and all of that kind of stuff, when they could barely survive in their own land, and they could barely survive over in America, and they're going to come run up in Africa and just start taking people out the jungles of Africa? No, they had to have cooperation. They did. That's just the reality. There's stuff still going on in Africa right now. You go to Lake Volta, you got the child labor slavery. You still have stuff in Northern Africa going on with selling West African slaves. You see the whole CNN, not that CNN is the most credible, but she did have a camera and all, So cameras they tell the story for you. So it's, the reality is it's complex, but when we start understanding the complexities of it, we now learn how to position ourselves. You have so many people complaining, but they don't even want to play in the game. And when I say the game, meaning say, okay, so how do people rise above this? How is it, what can we do? And it goes down to a micro level. Now, I made a statement when I was talking about the different countries, and I talked about the power of Black America. And so there's power in Black America, and then there are challenges. And I'm going to show you a report to back up the statement that I made, and then I'll offer a little insight, and then I'll get on out of here. So won't belabor the point today, but some people like to watch. So hey, keep on watching. But check this out.
Time now for our Equity and Opportunity series, and Frank Holland joins us this morning with a closer look at the growth in Black spending power. Frank.
Hey, good morning to you, Andrew. Black spending power reached a record $1.6 trillion in 2021. The ability to buy, save, and invest more than doubling since 2000. That growth exceeding the full U.S. economy, but actually lagging other ethnic groups. Latinos with a 288% increase, Asians with a 388% increase in spending power. However, other groups, they've also seen an increase in their net worth. Black Americans instead have seen their wealth actually fall by 14%. And with the S&P gaining 27% last year, the value of U.S. homes increasing by 31% last year. Many Black leaders are asking the Black community to really rethink how it spends.
Save money to purchase the most important asset you'll probably ever own, and that's your home. And that to me is equally important. As I said, I'd put it right up there with arguing or campaigning for or supporting voting rights.
I would love to see us spend more money in the stock market. Instead of buying the hottest new thing, buy the stock of the hottest new thing. And that's something that is something that you can also pass down generation to generation.
Home ownership is typically the biggest wealth builder in the Black community. That's actually fallen more than 3% since 2000. And annually, Black families accumulate $300 billion less in wealth than white families, and they save $75 billion less. The racial wealth gap now at more than $11 trillion. Back over to you.
Frankie, the statistics are startling and fascinating in so many different ways. Do business leaders and other experts have thoughts on how to stop the trend and what's really behind it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, some of it is simply allocating more capital to assets that at least have the potential to appreciate, things like houses, stocks, and bonds. Other reasons are systemic, and that's why about 1 out of every 5 Black family has a negative net worth. Right now, systemic issues, redlining in housing, disparities in education, and other issues that are going to take a longer time to address.
All right. I thought that was a great breakdown on everything. So it puts into perspective that Black America is not broke. $1.6 trillion of spending. I prefer to say investing power, because the way that many of us in Black America have been conditioned is to think that we've been bred to be consumption base for so many people. So if you say spending power versus investing power, it kind of changes the connotation a little bit, where you're thinking, oh, I can go spend this money, versus I can go invest this money and build it up. Now, I'll say this, and y'all know I don't pull any punches on it. If Bob Johnson would have been teaching Black people through way of BET throughout the 80s, this type of information, we would definitely be in a much better position, instead of peddling a lot of that garbage that he was filtering down to us with the negative images and all of that stuff that has many people in Africa thinking that that's all Black America represents. The hypocrisy of that joker. We appreciate him dropping a few little nuggets in here, but now if he wants to clean up his dirty draws legacy, what he should do is now come back and educate people on how to become billionaires or whatever it is he considers himself, instead of now coming talking about this is what you need to do here in a little bit. Build another BET, do a investment, Black investment television, and show people how to really move forward if you really care. Mr. Capitalist Bob Johnson. So anyway, I just had to drop my 2 cents in there on that. But anyway, the reality is, though, what's being said, and I appreciate people who are out now like Earn Your Leisure and Sleepers for Suckers and Wall Street Trapper, and of course the legend Dr. Claude Anderson and my man Dr. Boyce Watkins. All of these people who are out here now leading the charge for financial literacy and entrepreneurship, and many others in the Black community who are saying that we have to now get our stuff in order and educate ourselves from a financial literacy standpoint, and recognizing that we do have power. Because if you're not careful, what will happen is someone will continue to market to you to where you basically you aspire to have you financially, you're even a white supremacist in your spending, because you're now spending your money on white supremacist brands, instead of saying, you know what, I don't even need to get all that Gucci and all this, that, and the other stuff. You know what, I'm going to go buy me a few apartment buildings. I'm going to build me some businesses. I'm going to do all these different things, because if you look at one of the reasons why you see the disparity and why you see the Latino community having a higher I guess it's the increase in their GDP, is because many people coming are not caught up in this spending. They're not caught up into leveraging themselves a particular way. I'm not saying they don't at all, but it's culturally, we have had people like Bob Johnson and many others come through and say, in order for you to make it, you need to wear this particular brand, and that brand is run by a white company. And we would even shun the Black-owned brands. Now what we can do is we can take some of that $1.6 trillion and now pump it towards the Black-owned brands. And we can go to places like Curl Mix. If you have natural hair, you can go on Amazon and go right to Curl Mix, and you can buy. That's a Black-owned brand, a young couple. And they're, I believe, out of Chicago, and they're making all kinds of noise. Been on Shark Tank, had a major crowdfunding campaign. And so this is a Black brand that somebody can support. And so when you begin to learn about all of these other people who are rising above these stereotypes, because what happens is people like Bob Johnson and whoever else in Hollywood creating these movies, and you want to talk about a sellout, y'all. Anyway, all these different movies that when you start saying to yourself, okay, hold tight. No, we're not all gangbangers and thugs and all of that. We're not that. You want to know, if you want to know why much of the world sees Black America through that lens, Bob Johnson. Bob Johnson. Bob Johnson. All right. So I got some other names. I'm just not gonna call them right now. Based out of D.C. So it's like you stop and you say to yourself, we're gonna have to be responsible for it. And so our brothers and sisters in Africa, when they're in different parts of Africa, when they see us, they say, wait a minute, that's why I spotlight folks here who are killing the game financially, so folks understand we're not uneducated, we're not broke. So you got $1.6 trillion. So if you take all of that, you put the economies of many different African countries together, and it doesn't even amount to that. And not from a comparison standpoint to say, because some of the comments I get come from some of these places, it's just understanding these narratives that we have been told about each other. So now what I'd like to do is to say to many Black Americans and say, hey, listen, there are ways that we can bridge this economic gap, and we can take some of these resources that have been stolen. America stole the resources. The UK stole the resources. So now, but if we're thinking there's a way that we can still prosper and that we can take the resources back to where it's been stolen from. I hear a lot of people say, well, Africa owes me reparations, and Africa this and Africa that, without them even understanding how Africa was carved up and chopped up by those same players. But these same jokers will still run the little raggedy behinds right over to London. And I ain't got nothing wrong with London. London's fine. They'll still run over to Paris. And when I say that, meaning not saying don't go, what I'm saying is there's some people who will have all of this angst towards Africa without realizing that the player was the UK or was France or was Belgium or the Dutch or, it's all of these different things, or the Swiss. They don't even understand it. And so they're harboring this anger. I don't want to do with anger, but they might be missing out on tremendous opportunity. Because one thing about a capitalistic and imperialistic system is they're about the money. It's really not about the race for them. So however they can make the money, then that's what they're willing to do. They'll do deals with whoever. They might not like you, but they can do deals with you. And the thing is, the one thing about the British, the French, and all of them, the Dutch, and the Spanish, and the Portuguese, they fought wars against each other and murdered each other for hundreds, at least 100 years, and did that towards each other. Some of the most brutal wars in history up in Europe against Europeans. And then you go down into South Africa and the Dutch and the British and how they were killing each other. And then even in Ghana, the Dutch and the British. Then you see the Germans in Tanzania, the Germans in Togo, the Germans in Namibia, and you start looking, you saying these jokers, they kill each other like they don't care. But when they get on code, they get on code with that money. When it's time to make that money, you will find jokers on code. They say, oh, okay. So what the Black American with the continental African has to figure out, oh, we're in a system we get on code when it comes to making that money. Oh, okay, so now, how can we do this? And then you come up with a strategy. And so once you understand how they operate, because guess what? You're in their system. You're in their global economy. And I know some people believe that this is going to happen, that's going to happen. Until it happens, you're still in their economy. So in the meantime, until it all falls down, you're still in their economy. So, you can sit on the sidelines and wait, or you can get in the game and be prepared. One or the other, however you want to do it. I mean, each person, again, it's all subjective based upon what somebody believes. And so I respect people's different beliefs. I don't knock that from that perspective. But what I'm trying to help us to understand is that we're not powerless. We're not helpless. We're just in a system that we don't control. And so because of that, so what do? You figure out how to get in the maneuver, get in the system, and you maneuver it. So for Black Americans, what I say, or African Americans, or whatever, indigenous, whatever you want to call yourself, the first thing that you want to do is recognize the power that you have. You have the power to control what you spend. And so that's the first thing. Even if you don't have the power to control what you earn, you have the power to control what you spend. And that may require lifestyle modifications. That may require you to go live and don't, pay rent or whatever. Live it with someone or stay at home. One of the things that with my sons, when they were coming along, I said, hey, look, you're going to have responsibilities and you're going to learn. So like my one son, he's a chef and they pay his rent. So he doesn't have to pay rent. So he can just stack his money. Whatever money he makes, he's able to stack. My other son, he's at home. He pays rent here. He does not go pay rent in the street. See, a lot of us have our family scattered all over the place paying rent, not even paying mortgages and paying stuff and earning income that way. We're paying rent other places, scattering the money where everybody could stay in the same household, pay rent, pool the money, and build something. We've sent the money out, and now we're sending the money out of the community instead of building our own household income because we can't get along. because we need to get away from each other because we're carrying dysfunctions and traumas that we don't even realize that we're carrying, and now we can't get along with one another, and that one sets us back. That's another one of those dynamics that wasn't spoken about in that clip that talked about, the redlining and other systemic issues, but if we start saying, okay, let's take a look at how many immigrants come into the country, regardless of where they come from, they find communities and they build and they pool their resources, and now they can start businesses and do all kinds of things. So if we just take a lesson from those who've already done this or do it on a daily basis, it may be a little uncomfortable. It may require a little bit of humility, but remember, if you're going to play the game to win, you play the game to win. And so sometimes you look at your opponent and you say, well, what is my opponent doing to win? Maybe I take a strategy from them. But again, because of the cultural conditioning, many of us believe that we're entitled. We believe that we've been owed something. And I'm trying to tell y'all, there's nothing wrong with going after what the thief has stolen. But the thief is not going to voluntarily give back what is stolen. And so sometimes you have to go back and get what was stolen by way of the opportunities that you have in front of you. And then sometimes you have to say, you know what? I can't put but so much energy on trying to get back what was stolen. I might need to focus my energy on building something, positioning myself so I can now go and leverage and get back what was stolen. Not that you don't go after what was stolen, but you might need to be in a position of strength to be able to get back what was stolen, because we think that we're in a civil world, meaning a civilized world. This world is just as gangster as it's always been. And what you have to understand during those times, because most of us only see the world through our modern context and our modern understanding, our modern rationale, because we weren't here 100 years ago. We don't understand that, when you talk about territories, people were just taking whatever they wanted to take. It wasn't about being fair. The world still isn't fair. So when we get off of that, you should do this, you should respect me, you should do, and you should, and you're waiting around sitting on the toilet trying to figure out why people aren't respecting you. Meanwhile, they're passing you by, and you got to get up and say, wait a minute. I got to get in the game to win. And that's how the world plays it. The world plays to win. The people who whining and complaining on the sidelines are getting trampled over. And I see it happening. I'm waiting for y'all to cut my check instead of going out and creating your own check. And then from there, once you create your own check, you create leverage and you create influence. And then at that point, now you can say, now I'm ready for my check because I got some influence. I got something to back me up. I have enough people who recognize what's going on. So now where's the check? The reason why a lot of checks aren't being cut because there's not enough education, not enough influence to be able to leverage it. Because we're distracted with many of the entities and things that Bob Johnson created. We're distracted with the entertainment. We're distracted trying to be white people or fit into white people's systems. That's continental as well as African-American, the Caribbean, well, all over the UK, Canada. We're trying to fit in to these systems instead of recognizing that we already have the resources. Black America has resources. If we really, put our mind to it, although we're in their system, we have resources within their system. When you look at the continent of Africa, everybody wants to say the continent of Africa is poor, when in reality, you go to certain parts of Africa, you can grow food all year long. You have endless land. You have rain that rains constantly, tropical temperatures, beautiful beaches, but then they say it's trash, but then they come and they go get the gold, they get the bauxite, they get the uranium, they get the copper, they get the oil, they get the diamonds and put it on their crown, and then we celebrate them for stealing the diamonds and killing people along the way, put it on their crown, and we celebrate them and mourn their loss, but have no respect for the dead people who lost their lives in concentration camps in those same systems of oppression that we now defend. And so what I'm saying is when we wake up as individuals, not even as a people, when we wake up as individuals, it's an amazing thing that happens. And that's what you're starting to see happen. People waking up as individuals. And they're saying, no, I know what I have. I'm breaking free from this colonial education system. I'm not just considering myself educated because I got a degree from their educational system, but I'm going to get a world education. I'm going to get a financial education. I'm going to leverage every piece of education that I have, because what that will do is it will put me in a position of power on multiple levels. I'm going to educate myself about this country's economic system and that country's economic system. I'm going to turn off some of this TikTok that's not going to be beneficial. I'll watch the TikToks that are encouraging me to make positive financial moves. I'm not going to dumb my brain down with just watching nonsense all day long. I might give myself 45 minutes to an hour of brainless entertainment. But in the meantime, I'm going to be using every talent and skill that I have. I'm going to be now producing and creating the dreams that I have instead of waiting for somebody else to come along and give me an opportunity. I have all the tools in front of me. I have the education in front of me. I can turn on YouTube and be in class all day long, learning how to do anything I want to do. And so that's on an individual level. That's not on a corporate level or a culture level. That takes someone saying within themselves, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to waste my life caught up in the foolishness and the programming that I've watched so many others do. And when you do that, now nobody can take that from you, no matter where you are in the world. And you take that strength and you run with it and you say, okay, this system is much bigger. This system is exactly what it is. I need to find my place within the system so I can make a difference within the system. And by that, that's when the system begins to change. And it starts on an individual level. You waiting on Martin Luther King to come back. You waiting on Kwame Nkrumah to come back. You waiting on Muammar Gaddafi to come back. You waiting on Nelson Mandela and Oliver Tambo to come back. You waiting on, I don't know, Malcolm X to come back. You waiting on all these different people. Selassie, you waiting on these people to come back. When they understood, many of them understood that all they could do was impart, and they left it for the next generation. And so we got to stop waiting on people to come back and lead us and lead ourselves. That's the bottom line. All right, I'm done. Yes. So I'm sure I said something to trigger somebody, but I hope it triggers change. I hope it triggers transformation. I hope it triggers and inspires someone, that individual, to go out and use all of your talents, all of your skills, and do what it is that you can do with what you have. And stop waiting on somebody else to do it for you. For my brothers and sisters in America, look, y'all see we got the power to do it. So don't let these people tell you you don't have the power. Clean your credit up. Get your finances in order. Do what you need to do. Go ahead and start purchasing that property and that real estate. Go ahead and start that business. Do your homework. Learn what it is to start a business. Understand it. Become a part of business training and coaching and conferences and stuff like that to educate yourself, because they're not going to give you the gold right in front of you. You got to go get it yourself. Sometimes you got to go dig that gold out the ground. You got to find that dust. You got to sift it. And then you see those specks of dust and you keep on putting little pieces of dust together, and enough of it will form that nugget. But if you aren't willing to go dig for yourself, then why is somebody going to dig for you? Go out there and dig. To my brothers and sisters on the continent, y'all have all the resources. So now what you can do, even if you don't have the education and meaning the money to go to formal education, then you can spend your time on YouTube educating yourself. You can learn how to become a videographer. You can learn how to put all of this stuff together and be a creative and utilize the tools that you have. You have free education right there on YouTube and Google and all these different places. So take advantage of that, even if the resources are not right in front of your face. Understand the colonial system that you're in. Learn that system. And if you get an opportunity, figure out how you can tap in. And see, there's so many different resources right there. We're in an information age, and that's where the gold is. All right, y'all. We got more on the way. I'm excited. I always want to invite you. I hope to meet many of you on our Maximum Impact Travel experiences. And we got Tanzania coming. We got Ghana, got South Africa, got Egypt, got Kenya, Seychelles, Senegal, Togo, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria. So many different places on our itinerary, on our plan, on our map for the coming year, and we want you to be a part of it. But I want to take you back a little bit so you can learn about what we've done in Tanzania. We've got a big documentary coming up about it, and we want you to join us in Tanzania. Talk to you soon. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that subscribe. Do it right now. Even when you think about it, close your eyes. Subscribe. Hit the notification bell, and then tell somebody else to subscribe. All right. Talk to you soon. I want to welcome everybody to Tanzania. Now, does everybody know the theme for this trip is to what? Relax and what? Enjoy. So I think everybody can tell we're going to have a good time already.
Apply the heat and the balloon will rise.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon. Try to catch me howling at the moon.
Drop
pipeline, it was special. It was special. Well, hello? Hello? Where? Good to see you.
How you feeling?
Last time I saw you was in Ghana. Hello, everybody.
If we can continue to find a way to bridge our differences and, really come together, come to Africa. A lot of people really want to come here. This trip is not only a trip, but it really is an experience, and it's a learning experience. We've already learned so much just at the table. So I'm excited to be here. I'm glad to be here, and I can't wait to continue to learn and just be with all of y'all.
I quite didn't want to come to Africa, okay? And when I got here, they were so kind. And I like, oh my gracious, then I got to meet you guys, and y'all started telling me about the trip. And I said, okay, this is gonna be fun. So now I'm kind of excited. My wife said, well, you ain't got no excitement, but now I'm looking forward. So, hey, I'm hoping one day I can have the same testimony as you guys, and I'm just glad to be here.
This is our second Maximum Impact experience, and I've been singing your praises, Jay, hands down. If you want to go to Africa, you got to do it with Jay. There's no other way, no other way. And to be honest with you, when Renee, Jeff, James signed up for this, I'm like, we can't let y'all go without us. And so here we are.
It's just the most interesting thing in the world to come to a place such as this. It's beautiful. I mean, this is a beautiful resort. You all seem like very wonderful people. We all have something in common. We're all connected. We all are connected.
This is my second trip with Maximum Impact. I was in Ghana July last year, and I brought my daughters with me. And they had a pretty rough experience because they had a lot of expectations that weren't realistic, but it took them 2 weeks to decompress and then to understand fully the magic that had happened on that trip.
This is my mom, Claudette, and I'm very grateful that she brought me here. This is her first trip with the group, but she's been to Africa like 3 times. And again, I'm very grateful that she brought me here.
This is my second trip, and I'm going to have a third, a fourth, and a fifth. And I tell you, I'm still excited about all the things that I'm experiencing. And you would think I've been to many countries, I've traveled a lot, but I've never been to a country where people look like me. Everywhere I went, I always had to fit in. And that, was kind of traumatic for me after coming here and being received the way I was.
I'm just looking forward to the whole itinerary. It looks really, I know it's really well organized, and looking forward to the whole thing. So glad to meet everybody and look forward to meeting in person and talking.
Hi, my name is LaDanya. These are my parents, and I'm really excited to be here. I'm 21 years old, and thank you for hosting this trip and bringing us all here.
Hi, I'm Faith Benson Lettle. These are my parents. I'm from Akron as well. This is my college graduation gift.
I got 18 grandkids and 9 great-grandkids, and all of them want to come. Because I was so excited, thanks to Jay. I was so, look, I walked through the streets of Philadelphia lifting up Africa. You gotta go. I said, if you're Afro-American, you write that down on whatever form, you need to go to Africa.
Travel a lot, and over the last couple years, I really wanted to do a deep discovery of Africa, all the African countries, and I found Jay, and I said, that's the way I want to do it. So we were very, very appreciative.
This is my sister Linda, and the reason I'm here is because Linda spoke so highly of the trip she was on in Ghana. Coming to Africa, I liked it. Something different. You can connecting with the people here, connecting with the workers here. I like that idea and that approach. So I wanted to come and see for myself.
I remember it was November 2020 when Mr. J. Cameron visited us. It was during COVID pandemic. Imagine we have 32 rooms, but he was accommodating only one guest, who was J. Cameron. Then J. Cameron told me, I promise you I'll bring you a group. Okay. So on behalf of Airport Planet Lodge, we are here to express our sincere gratitude to host you here today.
I can't imagine doing Africa without being on a Maximum Impact tour, because being with a group like this just adds so much more to it.
Open up your eyes and see all the wonder mystery of an African adventure with daring and destiny.
The relaxation, the peace that is here, and compared to where I live, it's like, I mean, it's amazing.
Oh, the butterfly.
Well, I can't say I come from here, you know, but in my heart, this is it.
It's just been beautiful, being able to see all of the nature, all of the animals. It feels like I'm in a movie.
It was a learning experience just to see, you know, what the country looks like, how beautiful it is, to see that it's not what they show you on TV. It makes me want to see more of Africa, to learn more about Africa.
Home, I had always done a lot of research on different parts of Africa, so I knew that some of the conceptions of Africa were not true.
We've seen it all. You hear me? Birds. We've seen grass. We've seen it all.
It'll change you within. I mean, you need to see it. I mean, you have to come.